I had the great privilege to serve in the Wisconsin-Milwaukee mission. Of the many doors that I knocked on, very few had a lasting impression on me than the one that I will share with you. One evening, as my companion and I were knocking doors, a man answered. We introduced ourselves, and he quickly made it clear that he was an atheist and wanted nothing to do with us. For the next 10 minutes, we bantered back and forth about gospel topics. Finally, we agreed to disagree on our views and go our separate ways. The man shook my companion's hand, then I extended my left hand to shake his. Upon realizing that it was my left hand that was extended and that something was wrong with my right hand, the man looked at me, grabbed the cuff of my right arm, lifted it into the air, and asked, "What happened to you?" I answered something like, "I was born with hemiplegia, which is a partial paralysis of the right side of my body." I will never forget his short answer to my response. "Well," he said, "that sucks." I was flabbergasted and appalled. I was at a loss for words, so I didn't say anything at all. Since this experience, I have thought many times about what I should have said to this man. I have concluded that what I would have told him, I would tell anyone. Regardless of the trials or afflictions that we face in this life, they don't suck. Pardon my language. As I look back on all that I have been blessed with, it is hard to imagine a life so fulfilling and enjoyable without hemiplegia. Sometimes, when we face adversity in our lives, the greatest test of our faith comes as a solution to conquering our afflictions. Let me illustrate this principle with another personal example. Very few people outside of my family have heard this story, but I feel that it is appropriate to share it this time because the principles that I was taught from it are applicable to all of us. One Sunday, many years ago when I was 12, my family and I stayed up late watching a movie. Not long after going to bed, around midnight, I awoke suddenly. My whole body was shaking uncontrollably, and I could not stop it. For several seconds, this went on, until everything went black again. Not long after, I awoke again, only this time I was being loaded into an ambulance by two people in blue shirts. After arriving at the hospital, I had a quick CT scan. The doctors made sure I was all right, and then sent me home. A month later, my seizures became more frequent. I underwent a medical test to determine whether these seizures would disappear by themselves or if I would require medication to keep them under control. Ultimately, it was determined that they would, in fact, not disappear on their own, so I was placed on medication. For the next 4 years, I lived in the shadows of this illness. I tried several medications, and while they seemed to help, none of them offered complete control over my seizures. Finally, during an appointment with my neurologist, it was decided that it was time to see if treatments other than medication would be a viable option. I was sent to Children's Hospital in Seattle, where I underwent a few tests that required me to stay in the hospital for several days. While I was aware of the severity and risks of the possible treatments, I was anxious and hopefully find treatment that would rid me of this disease. 2 weeks after leaving the hospital, I was informed that the best option for me at this point, was to undergo some minor brain surgery to sever the corpus callosum, the nerve that allows the two hemispheres of the brain to communicate with each other. I know that having brain surgery is the last thing that many of us would ever want to do, besides, of course, speaking in front of an audience. But for me, the decision to have this operation was simple and an easy one. I had lived with epilepsy for several years, and frankly, I was tired of it. I longed for the day when I wouldn't have to be a slave to multiple medications, which often caused me to be drowsy shortly after taking them. I longed for my independence. Maybe even one day I would be able to drive a car. Gratefully, the surgery went quite well, and I faced few complications. As I look back on this experience, it is safe to say that for me, the hardest part of this operation was not the operation itself, but having patience as I recovered. Even though I probably didn't think so back then, I am extremely grateful for that time in my life. We all have times in our lives when we wish things were easy, hoping that our lives were void of all afflictions. Yet, as we endure, or rather enjoy, the times of affliction, we can and will grow in leaps and bounds. I had to learn patience as I endured my years of epilepsy. Even when a solution was presented and I made the decision to go ahead with that solution, and my patience continued to be tested and strengthened. In addition to patiently waiting as I regained my strength in and outside of the hospital, I had to wait for an entire year after my surgery to finally be ridden of the medication that I was on and its accompanying side effects. Our trials don't suck. I will ever be grateful for the physical imperfections that I have been given, the challenges that I faced, and the ones that I will yet face. The more challenges that we encounter, the stronger we become, and the closer we grow to our Father in heaven. At least in my eyes, those challenges are more than worth the small price that we have to pay for them. Thank you.